Today, we are cracking open a super powerful research method. It's a way to find hard facts that are hiding in plain sight, in all the news articles, websites, and reports we see every single day. It's all about turning words into data, and believe me, it reveals patterns you would never, ever see otherwise.
Look, we all have opinions about the media, right? You might read a story and think, ugh, that feels so biased, or that they're totally ignoring another side of the issue. But how do you take that gut feeling and turn it into cold, hard facts? How do you actually prove it with evidence? Well, that is the big question we're going to tackle. So to see how this all works, let's open up a case file. The 2017 Uber scandal, let's say you wanted to know, for real, which newspapers covered it the most, or when the coverage was at its absolute peak, or maybe if the tone of the articles changed over time. You can't just rely on what you think you remember. No, for this, you need a special investigator's toolkit.
So, what exactly is in this toolkit? Well, the main tool for this kind of investigation is an incredible method for systematically digging through massive amounts of text.
It's called content analysis. And in that definition, there are two words that are absolutely key: systematic and replicable. What that really means is we create a very clear set of rules before we even start looking at the text. The whole point is to take our own personal biases completely out of the equation, so that anyone else following our exact same rules would get the exact same results. It's all about objectivity.
Now you should know there are other ways to analyze texts. You've got things like semiotics, which looks for deeper symbolic meanings, or qualitative analysis, which is more about letting themes kind of bubble up on their own as you're reading. But for us today, we are zeroing in on quantitative content analysis. And that is all about one thing: counting and measuring to get hard data.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Well, the heart and soul of this entire process is something called coding. And this, my friends, is where the real detective work kicks in. Just picture a news article, right? It's just a wall of words. It's messy, unstructured text. Coding is the process of going through that text and systematically assigning numbers to different parts of it, like the gender of the people mentioned or the main topics being discussed. It's how we transform that messy text into clean, structured data that a computer can actually understand and analyze. And the first tool you need for this is the coding schedule. Think of this as your investigator's logbook. For every single article you look at, you fill out one of these. Each row is a specific thing or dimension you're interested in, like the profession of the main person in the story, or maybe their age. But you might be wondering, how do you know what number to put in that code column? That's where the second, and honestly the most important tool comes in, the coding manual. This is your rulebook, your decoder ring. It gives you explicit, undeniable rules for every single dimension. The key here is there's zero guesswork. If the manual says to code a female actor as a 2, you code it as a 2. End of story. This is what makes sure everyone is consistent. And boom! Here's what it looks like when it's all done. So based on some imaginary news story about, say, a 35-year-old female entrepreneur, the schedule gets filled out using the rules from the manual. Gender becomes 2, age becomes 35, profession becomes 1, and so on. That whole messy article is now this clean, simple row of data: 2, 35, 1, 6, 4. It's now ready to be analyzed.
Okay, so that's the theory. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, let's crack open some fascinating real-world case files and see this thing in action.
All right, case file number 1. A study back in 2001 set out to understand how the business world talks about courage. The big question was, does the way newspapers describe a courageous business person actually match up with the official academic definition of courage? So what they did was they took more than 600 news stories that all used the word courage. They coded every single one for specific features, like what kind of obstacles the person was facing or what actions they took. By turning all those stories into data, they could systematically check. And you know what? They found that the media's idea of courage actually lined up pretty well with the academic theory. Our next case takes us into the world of microlending. Researchers were super curious about one thing. On a website like kiva.org, what kind of language in an entrepreneur's pitch actually gets people to open up their wallets and invest? So they used computers to scan thousands of these pitches, and they counted how often people used words about their past accomplishments, words like success or bought. And the result was totally shocking. The more an entrepreneur bragged about their past successes, the slower they actually got their money. I mean, how wild is that? It's the complete opposite of what you'd expect, and a pattern that would be totally invisible without this kind of analysis.
And for our final case, we're going to use content analysis as a kind of time machine. A study from 2014 looked at how job ads for communications jobs in Sweden have changed over half a century. So they dug up and coded job ads from way back in 1960 all the way through 2010, and by doing that, they could literally watch society change over 50 years. They saw a clear trend towards jobs requiring college degrees, and they saw a massive shift away from old-school gendered job titles like advertising man to more neutral ones. It just goes to show you how this method can track huge social changes over time.
Okay, so we've seen the tools, we've looked at the evidence from the case files. So what's the final verdict on content analysis as an investigative method? Well, the advantages are pretty clear. It's super transparent and replicable. Anyone can look at your rules and check your work. It's flexible, and as we just saw with the job ads, it's amazing for looking at changes over a long period of time. But it does have its limits. Your analysis is only ever as good as the documents you're looking at, and this is a big one. While it's fantastic at showing you what is happening, it can't always tell you why it's happening. It spots the trend, but it doesn't always explain the cause. So there you have it. You've now got the basic toolkit of a content analyst. So think about it. Think about all the media you see, the reports you read at work, even the social media feeds you scroll through every single day. What hidden patterns are just sitting there, waiting to be uncovered? If you had the tools, what story would the data tell?